future way back in 2002. Our story begins with that house on 1818 North Drive East. I would suggest everybody look at that house, look it up on Zillow. It is a part of most of my presentations, because what you'll see in that Zillow story is if you just buy and hold, you could lose, right? My journey of the first 5 or 6 years is buying houses. And then at the peak, when Fresno got unaffordable, if anybody's been in the game pre-2008, that house I bought for 107, 1818 North Drive East, 93703, we sold for 264. Technically, we didn't sell, we exchanged. So doing 1031 exchanges was a huge part of our investing lifeline. So we went from 8 units to 80 units, no new capital. If you've done a 1031 exchange or understand what it is, we were selling ridiculously priced homes that didn't rent for anymore, right? That same rent I got for $1,100 in 02 was the same rent I got in 06. And we exploded our cash flow. Then the crash happens. Banks stop lending to us because we're very real estate heavy, right? So I'm very familiar with banks changing their minds, and they've changed their minds here recently as well. So I've lived through that. We started using hard money. Then we started using private money because deals were everywhere. If you look at my name, you could see that we were buying houses routinely for under 40 grand back in 2010. So, I'm committed to Fresno. I have toyed with the idea of bouncing to Texas or Nevada or other markets. But I believe the number one thing being a real estate investor is learning your market. And number two is having a team respect, and trust. And I'm not going anywhere. I'm committed to Fresno. I'm still adding to our portfolio as we speak. We grew it to a peak of almost 190 units at one time. In 2019, I thought cap rates got a little too compressed in C-class multifamily. So we sold about 50 units to raise cash because I saw changes happening. I look at my market in Fresno every day. I've done it now nearly for 20 years. I spend a lot of time doing the best I can to network. Hence, I call agents like Carmen when they have listings because I want to talk to them, get a feel. I think it's imperative to tell as many people as you can in Fresno what you're looking for. Because when you do that over and over and over again, what will happen is deals will start coming to you. Half the deals that I've done this year came to me because somebody I interacted with in a positive way said, hey, I know what Michael's looking for. Let me call him. I found one. And that takes time, right? I have a track record of 20 years in Fresno. It doesn't take 20 years, but the more you do it consistently, you treat people well, you realize that real estate investing is a people business first and foremost, good things can happen. So I'm happy to take any questions. I didn't really come prepared with a presentation. I came to listen to Jason as well. I think he's the #1 investor in Fresno these days. So I enjoy hearing him speak as well.
Michael, where do you live in the Bay Area?
I live in the city of Mountain View, California.
Have you ever thought about moving to Fresno?
I think about it all the time. My wife would like to stay where we're at. So happy wife, happy life.
Well, and I'm sorry, and the reason I asked that, I have kind of a similar story from the standpoint. I used to live in a little city called Menlo Park.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided in 1990 to relocate to Fresno.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I didn't come down here for the clean air. I came down here to make money.
Yeah.
I have never, ever regretted that. Now, are you an agent?
I have my license, yes.
Okay. Broker, agent?
Just agent.
Okay. One thing that you might consider, and I'll tell you, like you, I'm married. I've been married 43 years. But the #1 cause of people not becoming successful investors, did you put it in your book?
I guess no.
The spouse.
Oh, yes. No, that's in the book. Definitely. Yes, I agree with you. Absolutely.
And I'll tell you, beyond a shadow of a doubt, one thing that you might consider, and you certainly don't need to hear this from me, is getting yourself a temporary, not a temporary, but a location that you can spend X number of days
Yeah.
of your week in the Fresno market. Bring your license down here. We'd love to have you. You know, and the opportunity for investing over the next, let's say, our market is, in my opinion, going to take a phenomenal change in the next few months. There's going to be foreclosures on the market like we used to see.
Mm-hmm.
Going to be short sales.
Mm-hmm.
Going to be a lot of reasons that being in Fresno, and we agents in Fresno know one thing about what's going on in the market. Number one, there's less than 1 month's supply of active listings in the Fresno market right now.
Yes, sir.
And to be honest with you, as a listing and sales agent, since we're all agents, I can say this, I'm getting so sick and tired of listings, it's pathetic. Because every time you list a house, you get 5, 6, 7 offers shown every 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, a lot of some of our agents, it's part of our problem in the real estate industry, and that they're not qualified to be agent. They create a problem with our industry. So all of a sudden they're out there showing our houses and they're creating problems. And I'm going to stop, Carmen, because I know we have Jason. I get on my bandwagon, Michael. But having been where you are, come down. I'd love to have you visit. Just as soon as this cancer treatment's over, I'll let you buy me dinner since you're doing so well. And
I would enjoy that, Tom.
We'll talk a lot.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, you did mention in your book that one thing you do have to have is your partner on the same page as you.
Oh, without question. I mean, if you go back and listen to that horrible story I wrote about our first rental property, Carmen, right? That 1818 North Drive turns out unbelievably well, right? It still leads to an apartment building that we still own today. But let's not forget, we put that tenant in and they suddenly get divorced, right? Or separated, ultimately divorced. And they never pay rent. And this is the state of California. Even back then, it took 2.5 months to get him out.
Right.
He becomes an alcoholic. He destroys my place. And again, that's my first rental property in Fresno. And for most people, that would have crushed them. Their wife or their significant other would have said, "Sell it. You're an idiot. You just lost 100 grand in the stock market. Now you lost 30 grand in this house. What are you doing? You're killing me." But no, my wife goes, "Cost of doing business. Check the processes. We did everything right. Let's try it again." And that one decision led to an 8-figure portfolio. So I give her all the credit every time for that decision.
That's wonderful. You also say, make the choice of what type of investor you will be. So you chose to just keep the rentals and not do the flipping.
Yes. Yeah, I think it's imperative, right? You've got to know who you are. And again, I was a busy tech professional who could literally be in 3 different foreign countries in a week. My job was to find deals and secure capital. And I had just enough time to do that. I could not do anything else. I couldn't self-manage. I couldn't run a general contractor or anything else. And frankly, at the time, I was coming off significant losses where I was not very confident. So I figured if I could buy a deal and then focus on making the next deal better than the preceding deal, my mind could make that work. So I spent the next 10 years of my life was always trying to make the next deal better than the last deal. And I frankly couldn't think of anything else because I didn't have any time. So, that was important to me.
It sounds like you did a lot of research, though. You kept up with the market, you followed things.
Oh yeah, I still look at Fresno every day. I've looked at Fresno probably 99.9% of the days in the last 20 years. Something in the Fresno market, networked, growing my network all the time. So,
Michael, you focus on multifamily or single-family residences?
I focus on whatever the best deal is. The journey starts with single-family homes. Those got stupid. I 1031 to apartments. Apartments got stupid. I'm back to houses. I'll buy whatever the highest yield is. Whatever's producing the highest cash on cash, I'll buy. If that's a 500 square foot, 1-bedroom, 1-bath house, I'll buy it. If that's a multifamily building, I'll buy it. I think those markets, at least in my experience in Fresno, they're not the same. Houses go up, multifamily it's not on the same trend line. So if you're I call it dancing through raindrops. If you move your money around and you're not stuck with, hey, I own this and I've owned this for 10 years, I'm going to own this till I die. you can move equity around and really benefit cash flow.
I like what you said that banks liked, what did you mention? They like W-2 employees, but then when you, have more property, that kind of puts you in a different position and not as friendly to banks, right?
Yeah, I found it really odd. So again, so it's 2010. I've been approved for every loan I can. I don't know. We have 6-figure income, 7-figure net worth, 800 credit score. So you got all the checks boxes, right? And we have cash for the next down payment. I walk into my bank who has, predominant of my savings and checking and all of that. And I look for my next loan and they tell me no. I'm like, what do you mean no? What are you thinking, right? And they go on to tell me very nicely, hey, you're an investor. We're not really lending in that market now. Fresno's a secondary market. It's a non-tier one, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, what the hell? Then I go across the street to another well-known bank and I do it again, right? Because I figure, hey, maybe I have too many loans with that bank. This next bank, which I have no relationship, basically tells me to F off, right? They're not polite. They're like, get out of here. You're an investor. You're part of the problem. I'm like, what the hell is going on? And oh, by the way, prices are falling, right? I'm like, I don't get it. So yeah, we had to find another way. I wasn't done buying. So we had to figure it out.
That's good info.
Michael, do you cover in your book the importance of understanding the federal tax exposure on investing, whether it be through buying, selling, losses, recapturing losses?
Only via my personal experience. So we do talk about 1031 exchanges, how that helps, how we basically took, appreciation, moved it untaxed. We do hit depreciation a little bit, but the book One Rental at a Time is just our journey of 15 years. It's not a how-to book. It's really not a how-to book. It's here's my 15 years after doing it, what we did right, what we did wrong, all the mistakes, what worked and didn't work.
Thank you for taking the time.
I thought it was cool though, because you do charts some of the, when you went from the single family to the units. And I think a lot of people may find that helpful, because sometimes the problem with getting involved is, how do I start? What do I do? And, the potential downfalls you may have. But you also have to look at the rewards. Yeah,
I think the worst thing a buy and hold investor can do is stay fixated on what they own. I will sell everything I own in Fresno if somebody wants to overpay. Fine with me. I'll wait. I've been doing this a long time. I saw the devastation last time and profited wildly from it. So as Tom talks about, short sales coming, short sales leading to foreclosures, I've been there. I saw the wave. I know exactly how the market's going to perform. I think there's a second wave that Tom and I saw where houses went first, but don't get it twisted. Apartment buildings, C-class apartment buildings are going to get smacked. It'll be later. There's a delay effect, but it's going to happen. So, I sold C-class apartments on purpose because I wanted to have cash for what I saw was coming. I'm not done in Fresno. I got a little smaller. I got a little more liquid. I'm ready.
That sounds good.
There you go. Yeah.
Michael, you mentioned cash on cash return. Are there like major numbers that you look at, like a couple?
Yeah. So just so we're clear, I call it yield because cash on cash, as it's classically articulated, takes into account when you buy at a discount, which I think is bogus because I think that's a fake number that people lie to themselves. So I'm a very numbers oriented person. So what I do is there's two numbers, right? It's a numerator and a denominator. The denominator is easiest to understand. What is my down payment, my closing cost, and whatever it takes me to make the unit perform, right? Make ready. Like, do you buy a junker and have to fix it up, or is it turnkey? The numerator is just expected yearly cash flow after all expenses, right? I don't want you to back out freaking principal reduction. I don't want any of that stuff. I want what's coming out of my account and what's going into my account. And today's market in Fresno, a house produces about a 6.5% return. That's average today. So I'm looking for 7s and 8s. Those are impossible to find with a 1 month supply and everybody becoming an owner occupant. But back in 2010, it was 15%. Everything was on sale. So again, I look every day. I change my numbers all the time. This market that we're in today is like nothing I've seen in 20 years. And I say that as somebody who's looked every day for 20 years.
I know. Yeah.
Great.
Now, Jason, if you want to tell us your story, and then we'll have some questions there. And at the end, we can go back and ask questions to both of you.
Sure, sure. Thank you guys for having me on. I'll give you kind of the condensed version of how I got started. I'm from the Fresno area, actually went to Bullard, graduated in '99, and immediately got into corporate America. So I was working corporate like sales and management jobs for about 15 years, all through college, after I graduated college, between two different companies. And I just realized after both companies, I kind of went through a cycle. At the first place, I was there for 8 years. I tried to climb the corporate ladder. I was trying to, get into like a mid-level management. And, I thought that was going to be the path for me. You just, you get into regional management, you make a couple $100,000, and then that's going to be, the rest of your life. And I realized my heart was not in what I was doing at that place that I was working at. I didn't enjoy the politics. I didn't like and respect a lot of the people that I worked with. And so I jumped over to another company and I repeated that whole cycle all over again. So I did another 6 or 7 years at another company. And I got to the point where I was like 33, and I just said, like, this can't be the rest of my life, man. Like, there's no way that I can do this for the next 30, 40 years. Like, it's impossible. I was miserable. And I had learned that if I just keep doing this, it's just going to be this cycle over and over. And so for whatever reason, I was always intrigued with real estate investing. I'd always, like, even when I was younger, like I read Rich Dad, like Zuber had said, when I was like 18 or 19. I read Gary Keller's book, The Millionaire Real Estate Investor, and I was always into like self-improvement. And for whatever reason, real estate, I always got drawn to real estate. And, you get kind of complacent when you're in those jobs, because I was making good money. I'd been making over 6 figures basically that whole time. So I was kind of in this place where I was trapped, because if I stopped, what's going to happen with all the bills, and I had 2 kids and I had a wife, and we had all the things that come along with that, a mortgage, 2 car payments, credit card debt, like, all those things. Right. So I was accumulating all this debt because we weren't very financially responsible, and it just felt like I was suffocating. And so, I was at this transitionary point in my life, and I just said, if I don't try something right now, it's probably never going to happen for me. And I know you guys had mentioned, getting support from your spouse, and my wife's name, her name's Jennifer, and I try to champion her a lot because she had more faith in me in getting into this business than I did. Because when I tell you, I started out investing full time. I wasn't licensed. I did that for about 3 years, and I'll get into like kind of how I got started. But I didn't know anything. Like, literally, I didn't know anything about anything. Like, I barely knew what a real estate agent did. Like, when I first got into the business, I actually used to call up like title companies and say, like, what do you guys do? Like, how do you, like, what service do you guys offer? Because I just didn't know. And so I think the thing that really helped me was that I've never been afraid to take action. I've never been afraid. Like, if somebody gives me a plan, I can execute the plan. And I'm very persistent. I'm like a dog with a bone when it comes to something. So when I put my mind to something, it's going to happen. Like, over my dead body. Like, I'm either, you know what I mean? Like, it's either going to happen or, like, I'm just going to will it. Right. So I got into investing, starting flipping houses. And honestly, like, I mean, it sounds like so stupid, but it was because we used to watch HGTV we literally used to watch HGTV, and we would watch these shows, and I would think, like, I can do this. Like, these guys are not smarter than me. Like, I'm capable of doing this. And I know that I don't know all of this stuff, and I don't have anything figured out, but I know I'm smart enough to, if I just do it, I'll figure it out along the way. So that was it. And my biggest goal at the beginning, I'm completely self-taught. So I learned literally by listening to podcasts, watching YouTube videos, and doing a lot of networking with people. And so, like, relationships and going out, learning how to provide value to people that were doing the things that I wanted to do, and just knowing and understanding that at some point that would come back full circle, and maybe something that they had would rub off on me, and I would just take what it was that I learned from them and start applying it. And so I really started diving into everything 2014. I quit my job at that point, so I was basically all in, and I'd been giving myself a year. My wife basically gave me a year. She was like, listen, you have a year to figure this out, and if it doesn't fit, you're going to have to go back and get another job. And so I was like, all right, this is it. Like, no plan B. We're going to have to make this work. And so I started going on like Realtor and Zillow, and I quickly understood that it wasn't as simple as just like dialing up some foreclosure and like buying it cheap and fixing it up and selling money. So I spent like 3 months like spinning my wheels, like calling agents and fumbling through a lot of conversations and just, trying to figure things out. And, you know, it was just through that work and consistent effort, we finally found something through a family member. We ended up doing that project and ended up working out. It was something that we bought, fixed, and then resold. And during that time, I remember the contractor that I hired, as we were wrapping that project up, he said, well, what are you going to do now? And I said, well, I don't know. I definitely don't want to go back to work. Like I really want to try to figure this out. And so that's when I started investing all my time and energy and learning how to find off-market properties that you can buy at a discount and fix up, resell, or fix up and rent out. And I just went down that rabbit hole of like direct mail marketing and like going through the scenarios on how you find people that are interested in selling their property for some other reason besides trying to net as much money as they possibly can. And I mean, I'm sure all you guys have been in those types of circumstances. It's people that are inheriting unwanted properties. It's people that have problematic tenants. It's people that have distressed properties. You know, just kind of go down the list. There's 8 to 10 different scenarios that we see over and over and over again with the sellers that I work with. And, you know, I spent the first 2 years, I probably flipped like 18 or 20 houses. And then I ended up getting connected with some people that I'm still really good friends with. They were all my age, and they sat me down and they had this little mastermind group, and we would get together Friday mornings at 6 o'clock. Half the guys were from Visalia, half of them were from Fresno. So we'd meet in Kingsburg, and we go to this little coffee shop, and they were all not just strictly buy and hold investors, but they did a lot of buying and holding. And so for me, it was very interesting because at that point I was 35. And some of these guys had 30 or 40 rentals. And I was like, how are you 35? And how is that possible? Like, how did you even do that? And so I was very intrigued by that. And they would always tell me, like, Jason, why are you just selling all of these properties? Like, as soon as that stops, then the money stops. Like, you need to start thinking about long-term. You need to start thinking about cash flow. You need to, you know, for every 1 or 2 of these that you sell, you need to take one to the side and keep for yourself. And, at that point, I just went all in on buying rentals. Like, it was crazy. That was about 3.5 years ago. And in that time, we've accumulated, I think, 52 doors, 52 units is what we own right now. And so I basically take all the money from the properties that we would buy, fix, and resell, and I would reinvest it into rental properties. And then we lived off of my wife's income. She's a high school counselor. Now she's at Fresno Unified. And so we just structured it in a way where, you know, we paid down our debt. We lived just under her income so we could reinvest a lot of money back into the business. And so I went through a stretch where we were just trying to hang on to as many things as we can. So that was about, you know, 2 or 3 years of that. And then in the last year and a half, we've kind of transitioned, and just, especially, you know, this year, 2020, you know, we've just taken the deals as they've come. And, you know, we try to figure out whatever the best exit strategy is for that deal. So instead of trying to force it and say, okay, we got to flip everything, or we're going to make everything a rental, we'll just look at where we're at in the business, look at all the projects that we got going on, look at where we're at from a cash flow standpoint and where we're at in reserves. And if it makes sense to sell to free up some money, then we'll do that. If it makes sense to hang on to it because we've got other rentals in the neighborhood and we know it's going to perform well, then we'll do that. And, you know, that's been kind of the journey on the investment side. About 2 years ago, I decided to get licensed. I had always kind of gone back and forth, and the people that I trusted, I would always get, you know, should I get licensed? Should I not get licensed? And the responses would always be 50-50, like split right down the middle. Half of them would say, no, it's too much liability. Don't do it. It's a waste of time. Your time's better off spent being an investor. And then the other half would say, yes, it's good. You get access to MLS. You can build your network more. There's another income stream. There's all these other things. And I knew that I wanted to build a team. So one of the good things about being from a corporate background is that I could see what it's like to operate a sales operation at scale, right? And so it's impossible to be a one-man show. And that was what I was doing, like, up until a few years ago, honestly. Like, I was literally wearing every single hat in the business. So I would go field all the calls. I would go on all the appointments. I would go put all the properties under contract. I would project manage everything. I would go meet the contractors in Home Depot and be writing checks. I would do the books. I would be, you know, like there, like cleaning and just like ridiculous stuff, like stuff that you should never be doing. And I finally said, like, I reached the capacity of like what my like actual output was, and I wasn't able to do any more. I had 15 rentals. I was all self-managing everything. Like, I was literally trying to do everything. So I hired one person. I have one assistant. And she kind of took over like my administrative stuff. She's my kind of TC. She does project management. She helps with property management. And then I knew that I wanted to start delegating the sales side. So that's kind of what was motivating me to become an agent. So I was licensed a couple years ago. We ended up starting a team with the co-founder of the Clayson Group. His name's Benny Clay. We've got 4 or 5 agents that work for me now. And the model that we take now is I still do a lot of marketing. So I probably spend $5-6 grand a month on marketing through all the different channels to get our deals. And then those leads that come in, they go out to our agents, the agents on our team. So I've kind of delegated and handed that task off to them. And then we just try to take a consultative approach when we go out and meet with the sellers. And we don't try to force them down one way or another. I think 80-90% of the time, we kind of know what the best option is for them, but we like to just go out and say, hey, if you want us to sell the property to us and just pay cash, here's the price. If that doesn't work for you, we could potentially list it for you. Here's how that would work. Or if we want to do something creative in between, you let us know what's the right bet. And so I found that we've been able to, monetize more of the marketing and the leads that we've got coming in. The team is cranking right now, and we're really rolling. So it's been interesting to see this journey and the trajectory over the last 5.5 years.
Now, one thing I hear you both say is that sometimes, surrounding yourselves with groups that have the same interests brings you opportunities, right?
Yeah, for me, that's if not the biggest thing that had an impact on me, it's definitely right up there in the top 2 or 3. Like it was funny because all of my friends were like, if you look at them from an outside perspective, like one of my close friends is a doctor, one of them's an attorney, a guy's, so like they all work, we all went to school. So we all kind of think like, oh yeah, like these guys are doing good. And it wasn't until I got around people that forced me to think bigger and realize like, hey, there's all these other opportunities that are out there that's possible. And it's not like brain surgery, what we're doing, you know what I mean? Like it's actually like relatively simple. It's just not easy. And so that's the thing that I've always taken away from it. Like I've met a lot of really highly successful people in this business that, have been in there for long times. And I've never walked away from any of those meetings feeling like, wow, that woman or man, they have something that I don't have. You know what I mean? Like I don't ever take away anything from anybody, but I've always felt like, if that person can do it, then I know that I'm capable of doing it. Right. And getting around other people like that, especially at the beginning, is good because there's so much self-doubt. There's so much worry and fear and anxiety. And you need people like that can lift you up and hold you accountable because they shortcut all those things that you think are big problems. You realize very quickly that they're very small problems and there's usually very easy fixes. And I think that's the value of having a network is instead of like me trying to spin my wheels and worry about fixing something, I can call Zuber and I could be like, hey dude, like here's what I've got going on. What would you do in this situation? And Zuber's already dealt with this problem 20 times already. And he's like, no, man, don't just do this. And it doesn't even register in my mind, and so that's the value for me. And so like, I really love doing stuff like this. I love helping people out. When I first started, I was literally just figuring all this stuff out on my own. The investor community was a little bit more tight, like, what's the word I want to say? Like everybody kind of kept their stuff like closer to the chest. And I feel like recently, there's been this wave of where people that are doing at least what I'm doing, we want to collaborate with each other. We want to work with each other. We want to share ideas. And it comes from a place of abundance where we realize like, there's plenty of stuff out there. There's plenty of deals. Like I'm living proof of that. Like if I can start 5 years ago without knowing anything and we're doing 60 flips a year and own 50 rental, like there's plenty of this stuff out there. It's just, you have to get good at finding it. And I think the more that we can share and lift each other up, I think the faster we can all get to our goals, and it creates this really cool positive momentum. And I don't think that there's a shortage of opportunities out there.
Jason, how many people do you have on your team right now? You say you own 50 houses?
Yeah, 52 total doors. So it's a mix of single family
doors.
and some small multifamily. Yeah.
And you're also doing listing and sales.
Yes, team sells about 100
transactions
houses a year.
typically you close a year.
We did just under 100. The team did on the agent side of the business.
And you have a team. How many people are on your team?
So my team is structured this way. So there's the investment company, Pinnacle Investments. That's a company I own. I have a full-time personal assistant / project manager / property manager. So she really wears a lot of hats and does a good job. My wife has also recently stepped up and taken a role in the property management side of the business, which has taken a big weight off my chest. I'm really good. What I've realized is I'm really good at finding these opportunities. I'm really good at putting deals together. I'm really good at raising money for those deals and making relationships. I'm not good with the details. Like, I can do it if I force myself to do it, but I don't enjoy it and I'm not really good at it. And it's just better to kind of hand that stuff off. So I'm more like on offense all the time. And then, the people behind me are doing more of the defensive and administrative roles. So it's the assistant, it's the wife. I've got a bookkeeper. She's not full-time, but she probably works 15, 20 hours a week. And then we've got right now 5 agents that are on the team doing the agent side of the business and helping me drive sales.
Well, the only reason I asked that is because just remember, in fact, the first time I heard it, I read it in Michael's book. It says, you're never going to get big by remaining small.
I agree 100%.
Is that right? There's no way. Now, there is a time when you say, oh my God, I just had to do my taxes for 2023, and I just had to pay the federal government $100,000. We as investors that are paying the federal government $100,000 are doing one of two things. We're awfully naive, or we got too damn much money. So it's very important that we establish ourselves an investment team. And on that investment team is a CPA. You got to have a CPA. You got to have a good lawyer. You got to have a good escrow officer. You've got to understand 1030. In fact, I'm in the midst of a 1031 right now. It'll close today. I bought a piece of property in 1996, FHA foreclosure, single family in the front, 1-bedroom apartment over the garage in the back, $55,000 in 1996. I love the property, but let me back up and say, I don't fall in love with real estate. I fall in love with what real estate will do for me economically. So I just sold that. I sold it. I bought it for $55,000. I just sold it for $255,000. I bought a 3-bedroom, 2.5-bath PUD out in the Pacific Palisades out there off of Raleigh and Bullard. Now I gave, like I say, $255,000 for it. So I mean, it was pretty much an even exchange. I had no problem. But here's the good part, and I hate to sell real estate because there's only so. It's kind of like Twain said, land, they ain't building no more. So that piece of property had reached the point when my basis on that property was somewhere between $35,000 to $40,000. My depreciation was absolutely nothing. And I had to transfer that depreciation someplace that it created a taxable advantage for me, even though it meant getting rid of that property. So basically, I've increased the value of my net worth. I'll be renting that house about $2,000 as compared to the $1,600 that I was renting over here. So I have a greater positive cash flow, greater depreciation, and I'm putting myself in a better taxable position. So make certain that if you don't have a good CPA, get one. Make certain if you don't have a good partner, and we've got 2 good partners on our meeting today, Vasily Soteropoulos and Alexei Antonou. They're very good friends. They were raised together, and I'm certain at some point in time they'll be investing together, although, and they're going to be a force to reckon with. So I don't know, I've said a hell of a lot and probably said nothing, but understand how you can maximize. There's 2 things you want to achieve: a tax shelter while you're making money, and passive income when you retire. That's your 2 ultimate goals. And understand, make certain that nobody in Fresno understands the tax law when it comes to investing in single family residence any more than you, including your CPA. I'm done with that.
And Tom, you brought up a good point, and I'd like to ask Michael, because you know, with your 20 years of investing now and having, you know, the six-figure income you had before, you've only retired, I think, was it in 2018?
Correct.
Okay. So you had a really good income, and from that income, say in paying taxes, would you say you had a ton more to pay then than you do now as an investor when you have?
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that you learn in the tax code is a W-2 employee who makes, you know, more than the federal limits, which I think is 225 grand or thereabouts. You don't get any of this carry forward loss, or you don't get any depreciation against ordinary income. So I had 7 figures of carry forward losses still on my tax return. Now as an investor full time, I don't pay. I think I paid like the last 2 years in federal taxes under $2,500 collectively, and most of that was from stock trading. I don't. To Tom's point, my education is in accounting, right? I'm not a CPA. I never wanted to go that route, but I understand tax codes. I understand depreciation and write-offs, and why I did a bunch of 1031 exchanges is exactly as Tom talked about. When you depreciate it down to zero and you're not getting any goodies more, go bigger. Whether it's nearly the same amount, like kind as he, went from a 2-unit to a house off Bullard. Depreciation is something you have to do, and Jason will certainly get that. He's a very smart young man. He's got decades ahead of him. I fully expect him to 1031 exchange out of some of the stuff he owns today in the next swing, and he will undoubtedly go bigger. It's unless, right, we all got to realize there's an election coming up, and some of the people want to play with the freaking real estate rules. So it is possible they could change. We all hope not. So you got to stay tuned for that. But you got to operate under the rules of the game today and not guess. That's dangerous guessing. But yeah, understanding taxes, understanding how depreciation is a phantom expense or a non-cash expense is wonderful, right? I walk into any year knowing I could make somewhere between 250 and 400 grand and not pay taxes because of all the depreciation I have. So doesn't suck.
Yeah, and that's a really great tool to have. And I remember, I don't know if the house on Ferris, is that the one you had for 20 some years?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so come a point, is it 26 that you may think about?
Well, I think so you, again, right. So you're kind of leading the witness. So if it's a residential property, I believe it's 28 and a half years. If it's a commercial property, it's 33 and a third years, I believe. An accountant on the phone could, but basically they're off by like 5 years. So I think you just need to look at what the environment is. And again, you need to look at what's going on in the portfolio. It goes back to my statement that houses and multifamily, people think they go up and down the same. They fundamentally don't. So what I do is when houses are fundamentally overpriced, I go at my portfolio and go, which 4 or 5 of these are not performing, right? Which one of you is not hitting my expectations? Because I'm about to dump you, take all of that equity, both in appreciation, mortgage pay down, value add, whatever you want to call it. And I'm going to take all that equity. I'm going to put you into a bigger piece of something, whether it's another residential or I go bigger to commercial. I think you need to be looking at it all the time. I think time helps you. I think doing a 1031 exchange after a year is usually not helpful. But, I would evaluate doing it after 5 or 7 years for sure. Certainly, if you hold something as Tom did for, what do you say, 1996 to 2020? Right. Yeah, right. You've got nothing left. I mean, your appreciation is freaking nothing. So, if I ever get there with anything I own, probably about the 20-year mark. If I ever have anything at that point, yeah, I will aggressively look to go up. Because depreciation is awesome, but it does go to zero, right? It does go to zero. That's why I keep adding and going up, because depreciation, when you do it right and you balance where you think your income will be, and it's a wonderful place to be.
Yeah. From the standpoint of making a purchase in 1996, I also have an apartment house that I bought in 1996. In fact, my wife had an IRA account, and I borrowed all the money she had in that IRA account, bought an apartment house at the time. I now own that apartment house free and clear, and that apartment house brings me, let's $4,000 a month. Yeah. Great tenants. and it just sits there and it sends me $4,000 a month. But you see, when you get to be close to the age I am, then all of a sudden you're thinking passive.
Yeah, of course.
However, one of the things that if I were a lot of you guys, I'd be establishing some rapports. I'd be calling Michael, hey, Michael, send me down a list of your properties that you might be interested in getting rid of. And between the two of you, take properties that are costing you money and sell it to your friend and have your friend buy one of your properties that's costing, just keep growing and grow with each other. People you can trust.
I agree with you.
That's something I know Carmen plans to establish with investors and exchangers, that we can work together. We can really maximize our income. But I can guarantee you, Jason is doing, I think, he's hiring people to help him run his business. He's growing and realizing you can never be big by staying small. It's never happened before, and it's not going to happen now.
And if you have any questions, you can unmute yourselves. Feel free.
Michael, I asked you this at the very beginning. I want to ask you again. What would it take to get you out of Mountain View on the Fresno? Haven't been there before.
Yeah. Well, I think the first step's going to be is I'm going to break down and probably buy a second home, right? That'll be how I kind of shoehorn into it. And that's just going to be the process, right?
I used to live on a street called Ringstorff.
I know it well. Yeah, that's 8 miles from where I am.
Yeah, it's beautiful up there. Cost of living is horrible. But I assume you were raised up there?
I was raised in Sunnyvale, California. Been here 50 years, roughly.
Yeah. Well, we'd love to have you in Fresno. Seems to me like that name Zuber. I think there's someone named Zuber that is an active agent here in Fresno now.
Yeah, there's a team. Yeah, Darren and Derek? Darren and somebody. No relation.
His dad, Daryl.
Daryl, thank you. Yeah, no relation near as I know.
Some of the nicest people you've ever met in your entire life, and very, very smart.
Yeah,
and also big investors here too.
Oh, yeah.
Yep, we have spoken. The son and I have spoken multiple times.
Yeah. I had passed Daryl over at the board, let's say 2015, and let's say around 2019, I said, Daryl, I know you've had to lose a lot of money. And she said, what do you mean? I said, well, I've lost about $1 million over the last 3 years. And you see, I was speaking of net worth. And you said, I didn't lose a dime. I said, why don't you do that? Because I know you, to my understanding, you got at least 100. He said, I do. He said, just remember, you don't lose anything until you sell something.
Exactly.
Said, all of my rents came in on time. They continue to come in on time. And I still got all my property. So as far as I can determine, I didn't lose anything.
Yeah. One of the things is you don't spend net worth. Too many people have fixated on that number. It's one of those vanity numbers. It's frankly a lying number. You don't spend net worth. I don't even talk about it unless I get cornered. You spend cash flow, real net income, net cash flow. Very well said.
That's right.
And I'm
just curious. I'm just curious what both of your thoughts are in terms of where the market will be going in the next 6 months to a year.
I'll let Jason go first.
I am very aggressively trying to buy as much as I can with the intent of just stuff that has short-term exit strategies. So things that I can buy, fix up, and resell, ideally that are like not tenant occupied, but we're doing some of that stuff right now. I think Zuber and I were actually talking about this like last week. I think for me, I always lean on guys like Zuber because I've only ever known an up market. So if I started in 2015, the market trajectory has only ever been up. And I always am thinking about like, hey, when the music stops, I want to make sure me and the people that I care about, we all have a seat, when the music stops playing, right? And so I think it's going to go up until inventory, either, you know, comes back on the market or interest rates go up. I don't know. And I don't know if that was the conversation we were having. I don't know what's going to cause those things. I mean, I guess if there's a rush of foreclosures and a rush of short sales, you know, that could potentially be it, but we're so far below, you know, our normal inventory levels that, you know, even for somebody like me, my typical project, I'm in and out in 3 to 4 months. So my holding time on a flip is, you know, we buy it, fix it, stick it on the market. We're in escrow for 30, 45 days, and then we're gone. So I think with short-term stuff like that, I can still be nimble enough to try to, you know, get out in front of anything that changes. So I think the market over the next 6 to 12 months is going to stay on an upward trajectory. That's my opinion.
Jason, why do you flip?
Our bread and butter, Tom, is buy for, you know, 100, 150, sell for 200, 250. They're safe. I'm not competing with new construction. I can rent them. I can trade them to other investors. I mean, there's all kinds of different options. And I've always kind of felt that for me is the sweet spot here. I've done, you know, 350, 450, $500,000 homes in this market. And there's just more moving pieces. The design and the aesthetic and everything, like it takes more time from a project management standpoint. And I try to take more of, we want to put out a nice product and we want to make sure that the buyers are happy. We want to make sure that there's no issues with the house, but we've tried to take more of a McDonald's approach to that type of stuff where it's just, we have 2 different color schemes. We have the same vendors that we use all the time. We have everything on a spreadsheet. When we work with the same contractors, here it is. So that I don't even have to look at these places. You know what I mean? And so it just makes it way easier to operate at scale because we probably buy 4 or 5 houses a month. And so, you know, it's just, you know, the team it's growing, but it's still small. So, you know, at operating at that pace, we want to try to have some systems in place.
I just don't like bringing that income in as ordinary income.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be an issue. This year was a year where, because rental refinancing for me dried up, and I think, you know, I was able to buy, fix, resell, and then refinance all of those units into long-term debt, 30-year debt, and all of that financing went away when COVID hit. And so we made a decision basically at March, April of this year that we're not going to hold on to anything until that rental refinancing has come up. So that's created like, you know, I've made a lot of money this year, frankly. And so, you know, it's a conversation that we're having to try to figure out how we're going to depreciate what I already own to offset some of the stuff that, you know, that we're making, because we've made a lot of money this year. So it's been great. It's a blessing and it's a curse. I'm very grateful for that.
Are you going to pay a lot of taxes this year?
I hope not. You know, we're trying to figure all that stuff out. So just like you said, I'm definitely not an expert when it comes to that stuff, but I do trust and rely on the people that I've got, my CPA, the bookkeeper, the people that I have helping me with my accounting stuff. And so right now it's looking good, but you know, I've got a lot of really big deals left on the books this year. So we're going to have to continue to kind of play it by ear.
I have a question for both of you. During this COVID-19, and they have all across the country, they're saying, you know, if for investors or property owners, they don't want to pay rent, your tenants. Have you both come across any of that?
I've got one problem child tenant right now that is basically gone dark on me, hasn't paid rent in 4 or 5 months, called code enforcement on me, tried to leverage that as a reason as why he didn't pay rent, wouldn't let people in the house to fix the house because he claimed that, you know, he's worried that they had COVID. So, you know what I mean? And so it's just like kind of long drawn out thing with code enforcement. That's kind of the worst of them. I've got 3 other ones that have reached out and just said, hey, this is what we're dealing with. Can we, and obviously we worked with it. We came up with a plan that's flexible to help them reduce the rent to a point that they could feel comfortable paying it. And then they're just making payments. But I've been fortunate, man. We, you know, of 52 units, we've got 1 really bad one, 3 that expressed interest, and everybody else that's kind of paying on time. And the vacancies that I do have we're filling them right away. So there's still a very, very strong demand. I feel like most of my rentals, I would say, are C-class, like blue collar working class neighborhoods. And, you know, I still feel like the demand for those is going to be strong.
Yeah, similar numbers. Let's just call it 150 units or so, probably a little bit more. I think we have 2 tenants that are playing games. One, you know, kind of gone dark and, you know, clearly is going to ghost us. I have about $30,000 in lost rents or late rent, sort of cumulative. since February. It is growing, right? The eviction moratorium is hurting. But you know, when I sat down with my team on Sunday, like February 15th, I was preparing for the worst. You know, I was preparing for shit. What happens if it's 75% collection, right? I didn't know where this thing was going to go. We have not been, knock on wood, including August, below 95% any month. It just adds up over time. You know, once the eviction moratorium is up, you know, we're going to send probably 8 people to eviction. My guess is 2 of them will come clean and pay up. I think the other 6 will go, which, you know, 6 evictions over 6 months is not abnormal. It's going to be abnormal because I have 6 in a week. But to date, knock on wood, we'll wait for September. It's been better than expected.
I think that on your case, you know, that's a good place where you're at. On Jason, you're at the normal, even without COVID, having 1 problem child out of 52. That's, you know, really good. You don't want to have not even 1, but for having 1 out of 52, that's really good.
I think it comes down to like how you've been managing them. I think like portfolios that were mismanaged, you're going to have more problems. You know what I mean? Like if you haven't been addressing issues, you haven't been responsive to your tenants, you've been letting repairs just linger and linger and linger and linger and just been an absentee landlord and not doing anything. Of course, the people aren't going to pay you. You know what I mean? But like we've always, every single one of the properties that I own that I bought below market value, fixed up. I've got a bunch of equity in it. I could have flipped all of them. So when we buy them, the model is to go in, buy them cheap, and then address everything so that when they're moving in, I'm charging top of the market rent. I'm trying to kind of eliminate some of the riffraff and so, you know what I mean? Like problem tenants by maybe charging a higher rent, right? But we're also putting out what I feel like is a good product, especially comparative to like what's available in the area. So, we try our best to screen tenants and, you know, people get through and, you know, everybody's going to have their things and it's never going to be 100%. But I think, you know, if you're on top of your business and you got a tight pulse on it, it helps mitigate some of that risk.
Thank you.
Do you foresee that we'll have a slowdown in rent growth or even possibly a decrease in our rent growth here in the Fresno and Clovis area?
What do you think, Zuber?
Well, I think we are. So my feelings on the Fresno market have changed in the last 3 weeks. And again, I say this as somebody who looks every day. So let's go back to that question from 2 ago. So I think the market in Fresno is set up to have a good 18 months, starting with single family homes. If you would have asked me 6-8 weeks ago, I would have told you, mortgage forbearance, hidden surprises, short sales are coming, REOs likely thereafter, get ready, March, April, May. That would have been my guess. But what I'm seeing now is appreciation is back. And again, I saw Fresno in 04, 05, and 06, where Fresno appreciated 20% year on year twice. I think we are set up to do that again. And that's going to help forbearance. That's going to help foreclosures. It's going to help short sales because you won't have to do them. Even if you got an FHA loan with 3.5% down, if the market goes up 10%, you can sell and put a little change in your pocket. And with months inventory at 1 or sub 1, and interest rates not going anywhere, I do not see single family homes becoming a problem potentially until 2022 because interest rates will go up and interest rates will smoke real estate. But that's tomorrow's problem, not today. But my real feeling about Fresno is single family homes are going to go up. They're about 330, 339 median today. They could easily get to 400, right? If mortgage rates stay under 3. I mean, it's unbelievable. I was buying with 7.5. It's crazy. And if that happens, suddenly Fresno is not going to be that affordable nature that all of us have grown to love, know, and respect. It's going to be a damn near, a median price California market. And that's going to make C-class value-add apartments more valuable. I was very nervous with my C-class stuff and sold 50 units in 19. Now I'm looking at that going, shoot, if population goes up in Fresno because all these Silicon Valley people are moving there for quality of life and cheaper living, and people from LA are coming up because you can work from home now. If Fresno sees a population growth of 10% over the next 18 to 24 months, we are going to see single family homes up double digits, We're going to see multifamily cap rates go down or stay down. And we're going to see rents go up. So I think rents will stay flat for the year. Nobody in the right mind is going to raise rents this year. Not cool. But I do think rents go up. Let's not forget California, or Fresno's in California, so we do have rent control, 5% plus inflation. But yeah, I think rents will go up. I think rents will go up for the foreseeable future. I am very happy to own everything I own in Fresno with what I see coming. And I would not have told you that 2 months ago. I was like, ooh, I might be a little heavy on C-class. I'm feeling really good today.
And I think that's something that you put in your book about watching external events that happen. And a lot of people right now are thinking, well, this COVID thing, you know, this market, the economy, we see the GDP, terrible numbers and, you know, 40, 50 years. And we're thinking, you know, this can't be good for our markets. But like we've spoken before in our meetings, the Central Valley here, we're in a bubble where, you know, we're getting outside buyers coming in, and it's still a strong real estate market. So given, you know, what's going on now, I don't think that, I agree with what you're saying, that we're going to be a strong real estate market, at least for a little while, especially with, you know, so much opportunity for entry-level buyers, given these rates, to be able to get in, which they probably didn't have that opportunity maybe a year or two ago.
Well, I think there's a couple of things that are going on that if you don't pay enough attention, you won't see. Right now, what we're seeing is we're seeing a dramatic rise in home ownership. And oh, by the way, we saw this before, but it was fake. It was artificial. If you were around in 06, you saw the Fresno market rise for a home ownership rise, but it was all fake. Liar loans, 2 and 28s, just stuff that wasn't there. Today, home ownership rising is real. And what you are seeing in Fresno, I talk to brokers all the time. You are seeing outside meaning non-Fresno residents who are renters, right? $4,000 for a 2-bedroom rental in San Francisco become homeowners in Clovis.
Yes.
And paying less. That is happening at a scale I have never seen. It always happened a little bit. People always retired. I'm going to go slower pace. No, we are seeing people with tech jobs going, I'm going to stay in California so you don't mess with my income. I'm going to go 2.5 hours away. It's 3 freeways. It's 101. It's 92. It's 99. Done. And I'm going to live on a lake. It's a man-made lake, but it's on a lake for $1.2 million. Freaking crazy. So Fresno, I believe this health event, this pandemic, whatever you want to call it, is going to produce a K-shaped recovery. What a K-shaped recovery means is you're going to have winners and losers. The losers are going to suck. So San Francisco is going to get crushed. I believe Fresno is going to be one of the huge winners for the next 18 months. That's my opinion, and I'm putting my money where my mouth is.
Michael, are you looking at other markets like Madera, Merced, Visalia, Tulare, Bakersfield, Arroyo Grande, Los Baños?
I invest in 2 markets, Fresno, the city of Fresno and the city of Madera.
Okay, thank you.
Well, of course.
Hey guys, I've got a couple questions. Jason, you kind of touched on it earlier about financing. So we made decent money last year, but we took every depreciation we could. We were getting it done, but it does kind of, you know, crush our berries on the refi. You said that your lending has dried up, or your rental refi has dried up, but do you see it going to change soon? And I'd be curious to hear who your go-to guys are when it does turn.
Sure. So
we want to do, I mean, I have done in the past what you have done. You know, invested at one point. I had 11 doors, and I finally have buy-in from my family that we want to get there too. So we're kind of excited about this market right now. But to us, it's going to hinge on financing.
So I'll answer. There's 2 kind of things that I want to unwrap there, Dave. So I think the first one you were saying, as far as the, like, you know, the depreciation, you make a lot of money, but you're depreciating it. So on paper, you know, everybody's playing that game. The rental product or the loan product that I was using, it's called either like a rental loan or an investor loan. And there's 2 companies that I worked with. It was Cash Call Mortgage, and then most recently another one called Finance of America. And I did a package of 7 refinances, literally like 2 weeks before we closed, like 2 weeks before the shelter in place was enacted. And I was getting 30-year fixed at, I could buy it all the way down to like 5 if I wanted to, but if I wanted to not pay any points, it was like between 5.5 or 6%. And it was a no doc loan. So they just pull your credit. I think in order to get best terms, you got to be above 730 at that time. And all you needed to do, there was no income, no W-2, no nothing. You just had to provide a lease from a current tenant showing that their lease payment was more than the mortgage. And then that was it. And so, I mean, we were doing, I know Zuber, I don't know if you used them or not. I mean, everybody that I know was using them. Like everybody kind of like in my circle, we were sending 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 of them at a time and just kind of doing these big packages. And, you know, fortunately I was able to do a lot of ones that I had kind of sitting there. You know, you get lucky sometimes and the timing was good and we closed on 7 of them. And now I don't really have anything that I need to refinance. So I ended up being kind of in a good spot. But I've heard that Finance of America, I think, is offering that as of right now. Somebody texts me that they're offering it right now. Those terms may not be as aggressive. I'd probably say they're going to be a little bit more conservative, but they're starting to come back. So that's who I would check with it. And I can get you a contact too, man, when we get off, if you want to talk to somebody personally, the girl that I talked to.
I appreciate that. I have a lot more risk tolerance than everybody else in my family. So the fact that we're now moving forward is kind of exciting, but I need my wife to really have buy-in on all of this. Because I'm messing with her retirement, she feels. And I feel so confident in this market that but I also want to assure her. So this has been very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's riskier not to do anything, man. Like, I think if you can get a 30-year loan fixed at 5% and you've got positive cash flow of, whatever, $300 to $500 after everything's all said and done, I'll take that. I'll take as many of those as I can get my hands on. You know what I mean? And I think especially out here, I agree with Zuber that I do feel like prices are going to go up, and I think that, we're going to continue to get squeezed. And so, if you can buy stuff now, 20 years from now, I think it's going to be worth a lot more than what you paid for it nowadays. So, I just, I don't see how you can go wrong, so that's kind of my take on that.
And what I tell people is, does it really matter what you pay for today if in 20 years it's paid for and you've had a decent cash flow all the way through there? You want to make the most amount. And Michael, you said 6% return, and I see that exactly is what this market is giving us. And the Bay has given us 2%. So there's another rush to the valley. I had a listing in Fireball that basically sold at $40,000 over what the last appraisal was in April. And the guy waived his appraisal contingency, and he's out of the Bay, and he doesn't care. The other note, since I got the side note, is I talk to property managers all the time, and there's 2 that I talk to probably bi-monthly, and they both have shared that right now they've got about a 5% problem with their tenants, and that's 5% who are either slow or have claimed, claimed COVID or have just gone dark on them. But that's 5% of their, and they're both managing over 100 doors. And in the past, we had about a 5% vacancy rate. So I feel like, okay, we're still you're about a 5% risk of not getting your rent right now. And to me, it's still worth the risk. But investors need to know that you got a 5% risk out there right now, and it could get worse. But right now, that's what they're looking at.
I talked to many people that own, 20, 30, 40, 100 homes, and I have to say none of them have had any one not paying, and that's what the consensus I hear. The numbers are very low. And that's interesting, though, in this type of market with these conditions, with COVID and unemployment, to have those numbers. And I think that tells us that Fresno is a real healthy rental market, and that, renters here value their homes. I too, when I buy property, and in your book, Michael, you say that by circumstance, deals come to you. And sometimes, when we're working on a project, I buy something, I always make sure to fix it up, granted in kitchen, bathrooms, clean it up, in interior, outdoor garage, make it look really nice. And that'll change the landscape of the neighborhood. Then you have people making changes to their homes, and it's appreciated. And your tenants stay longer and they take care of the place. I think I haven't had anyone, my shortest tenant right now is probably 4 years. So they stay long periods of time. And as we acquire property, sometimes we have, for example, units you can attest that have been there when you buy them, and they may be there for a decade or two. So that's really a great thing for our Central Valley. But Michael, if you want to touch on something, because Kidder had his question on financing in your book, and I've used this, your retirement in order to buy property. And with COVID, I know that was something allowed now for a lot of W-2 employees, and that's another source that can be used, for if you're buying a primary home, maybe you're in a home now where you can buy a second home and maybe rent out that home and use your retirement funds with no penalty, because if it's for a property, sometimes they do have waive those.
Yeah. So what I think you're referring to is, I knew 2010 was a special year to be buying property. It will likely go down as my most active year, game changing, because nobody was buying and everything was on sale. So I turned over every rock to find money. And one of the rocks that we turned over was our 401ks. At the time, you obviously have to check with your employer. And again, remember, I was a W-2 employee back then. So if you have a SEP or something else, I don't know. But if you have a 401k with your employer, mine said you had to have a balance over 50K, you could borrow against it. And I borrowed against my 401k repeatedly. And I own, 15 to 20 units today because of borrowing against our 401k. I would choose to pay it back in 1 calendar year. Again, this is the beauty of building up cash flow from rentals. My paycheck went way down, right? Because I was paying back a $50,000 loan, $2,100 a check, which was fine because I had rentals. But that would allow me to buy over and over and over and over again, right? Pay myself interest. And oh, by the way, we were both doing that. My wife and I were both doing it. So we used the 401k loan repeatedly. And I believe, I don't have a 401k now, but I believe as part of the CARES Act, assuming you can prove COVID impact, you can take out up to 100K with no penalty. Now, obviously check the CARES Act, check with your CPA. This is just something I've read in passing. But that's a pool of capital that wasn't available when I started. I didn't have that option. Believe me, I'd have taken it too. Because I believe in real estate a hell of a lot more than I do the stock market.
I did the same thing when I got started, 401k. That was how I leveraged the 401k. We had a home equity line on our primary residence, and we would just use that and just rinse and repeat, just recycle that money in and out over and over and over again until I was able to start leveraging other people's money and working with private investors. But I think that's a great way to start if you've got that money sitting there.
Yeah, and I've done it probably 4 times, but ours is, I think, I use my husband's. I don't have one since I'm self-employed for 21 years, but it's very nice. And, to have the person trust in what you're doing, that they're able to do that. Hey, listen, this is a risk, but we got to take it, right? And the way it worked, we borrowed against it. So you have 100,000 in there, you can borrow 50,000, and we chose a 5-year repayment period, or sometimes a 2 if we wanted to do it often. So we're now where we can do it again. And I'm saying, well, we need to do this again. So that's a good tool to have, especially for a lot of people that, maybe we're all realtors, self-employed, but you have a spouse that does have this opportunity. It's something to look into. Feel free to unmute yourselves if you have more questions. I'll mute myself now.
Don't confuse borrowing from your 401k to a self-directed 401k. You're talking about 2 different ball games. And believe you me, a self-directed retirement fund in the long run, in my opinion, is not to your best interest, because there's one big flaw in that approach to investing. You can't depreciate, which is your biggest tool in your box. You don't depreciate a self-directed money. So be careful with that.
And another point I will make, in this group, we've talked about how our private ownership rights are being tested, and on the chopping block, with some of the propositions that come up recently. Proposition 15, Michael, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Proposition 15, that has to do with raising taxes, property taxes on commercial property. So that's going to affect a lot of businesses here locally, especially mom and pop stores, places that have been established, for many decades. And that can, with COVID and this going on, that can cause a big financial hardship on a lot of places. But one thing is certain: when we start with commercial property, that can lead into residential, because it is a Prop 13 split roll.
Oh yeah.
So we really need to watch for those.
Yeah, I think there's very few things in life that are certain, but I think something you can count on is the bill is going to come due for all this money printing, and that's going to mean higher taxes wherever they can. I mean, I've seen some freaking stupid proposals out of our California legislature, taxing millionaire earners, taxing wealth of all things. I mean, God damn. But yeah, one of the things you're going to see is an attack on Prop 13. There's no question. If they are successful in peeling off commercial, the next thing they're going to do is attack investment homes. And if they can attack investment homes, they're going to come for primary. Prop 13 is at risk. If you count on it, if you rely on it, it may not be there in 3 years. I mean, that's a real risk.
It is. And Nick, are you done with your purchase in Florida? I see Nick.
Actually, we close in 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks. And Nick, is this purchase with a self-directed IRA, or is it traditional? Oh, it's a second home. For
no, with interest rates the way they are, I'm purchasing it as a secondary home.
Oh, smart. Okay.
It's just hard to give up that leverage.
Very smart.
But I will say that I can count the amount of homeless people in one hand that I saw my 12 days that I was in Florida.
Yeah, it's getting to be a real problem here. So everywhere.
Yeah, I was just down in Santa Clarita the week prior, and Santa Clarita, there's a nice suburban area. It's all laid out really well, but then there's homeless all over the place. I mean, I was in the Bay Area a month before that. And it's just overrun. It's just nothing's being done.
Mm-hmm. And Paul Hinkle, is there any bill that you'd like to bring to our attention today? Let me unmute you.
No, there is none right now. There's some ones that are in committee and stuff still, but there's nothing out there to talk about right at the moment that I didn't talk about last week.
Okay. And then Michael, I'll send you some of the bills that we had discussed last week. I think in our positions, it's really important that we keep alert on what they are and how they affect real estate, because it doesn't just affect, one section of real estate. Part of what we do here also is we discuss what's going on globally that can affect us, not in different parts of the market, because, real estate is really influenced by economy and how people perceive the economy and their confidence in investing as well.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Carmen, I think there was a question in the chat.
Let's see. Elizabeth says, if you sell your property because depreciation is all used up, don't you get a much bigger tax property bill? Tom, do you want to take that?
I want to make certain to understand the question. Read that to me again.
If you sell your property because depreciation is all used up, don't you get a much bigger tax property bill?
Well, certainly you do. Yeah, your property tax is going to be in accordance with the purchase price of the replacement property. But in most cases, taking into consideration the increased depreciation factor and basically, in most cases, an increase in rent, it's to your advantage to do it. As bad as I hate to sell real estate, but it was like the one I just sold. Economically, it was in my best interest to do it. But yes, the tax bill is going to increase in accordance with the purchase price of the replacement property. Yes.
And Michael, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, when I hear questions like that, I think I hear it a little bit differently than Tom. So what I think I got in that question is, hey, let's just say, for example, I have a house worth 100 grand. I've owned it forever. It's now worth 0. I sell it for 200. When the question was asked, what I'm thinking the question is, hey, I sell it for 200. I have to pay capital gains on the whole 200. The answer is yes. But what Tom is doing is he's selling it for 200, doing a like-kind exchange into something at 220. So he has no tax impact. Right? He's doing an exchange, so there is no payment to the IRS. If what you mean by when you sell is you actually sell, yes, you're going to pay the IRS capital gains on 200 grand. But that's not what Tom's doing. He's not selling. He's exchanging. That is a different treatment. And I think that's different based on the question.
So we avoid taxes by doing that. We defer the taxes to the next.
Yeah, you basically flip off the IRS.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought the question was referring to property tax, not income tax.
It did say property tax bill, but we're trying to play devil's advocate on what is your.
I can clarify a little bit. I was talking about property taxes.
Darn it. Tom was right.
I probably didn't ask the question clearly enough.
Yeah, I thought, but from a federal tax situation, no, there are no federal tax exposure at that point. No.
Right.
But there is a property tax exposure.
Yes.
Yes,
definitely. For the purchase price of the replacement property.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Because Tom, if you had not done the exchange you just did, you would have been subject to what, about $75,000 in
$75,000 in state and federal taxes. Yes. So, and believe you me, at my age, I can't afford to be sending the state and the federal government $75,000 on one piece of property that I don't need the money to sell it and I can hold on to it. I mean, it was a no-brainer. You're going to do a 1031. You're going to make more money. And from what Angie just told me, that transaction has recorded, so I'll be picking up the key. And I'm going to do just like Carmen said, I'm going to have the entire inside of the house painted. We're going to have the floor covering changed. We're going to fix anything that is in disrepair and put it back on the market. That's what I'm talking about for.
Yeah, back on the market.
I'm going to re-rent it.
That sounds wonderful.
Yeah. You know, I didn't hear the question, but I'm going to throw this out there. Since I just did a 1031 of this property, what is IRS's holding period in a 1031? Does anyone know the holding period that I'll have to have in regards to this piece of property? I mean, I know.
Well, it depends, Tom.
Like?
For example, I've known people that bought Airbnbs as a part of investment, and they've had to sell it right away because maybe they had problems with the HOAs. And because that was intended to be a rental and they held it for maybe 4 or 5 months, they were allowed to do an exchange in that situation because their intent was to make this a rental, and because of certain situations, they were not able to do so.
Do you know what the holding period is on a 1031?
But the rule is 1 year,
Yep.
1 day.
0.
And Tom, I'm going to go with Carmen. It is all about intent, and you're right. If my intent was to hold it for investment, and the next day I have to sell it, and I can show that, you're probably going to get a pass. If your name is Jason or Michael, though, and you're saying, "Oh, I intended on holding it for investment," and you flip it, you're probably going to get looked sideways on that because you have been in the retail side of it. You haven't been. So you know, I think that you're probably going to get a pass on that, but that's going to have to stand up to an IRS scrutiny. And it's all about intent.
It's all about intent, and believe you me, I buy a piece of property. My intent is to rent it out, and I've done it, let's say, 1031 into the property. And I mean, I actually did this. I bought a house out on San Jose, right off of Venice Extension. I was fixing it up to rent. Well, lo and behold, across the street lives one of Fresno's judges. And right next door is another person that owns his own business here in Fresno. And both of them made it quite clear, if you rent this out, we ain't going to take that too kindly. I rolled it, did another 1031. I tried to rent it, came across some unsurmountable obstacles that I could explain on a hearing. Never had a problem. Does that sound right, Michael?
Yes, sir.
Okay, any other questions we have out there? You can feel free to unmute yourselves.
Yeah, this is Vince. I have a question. What's you guys' thoughts on condos, buying condos as a rental with the HOAs?
All depends on the HOA.
Yeah. I own one condo. I bought it for a ridiculously cheap amount of money. Condo association or homeowner association fees are like a mortgage you can't pay off. And oh, by the way, they can go up. So in general, I run away from them. But hey, if you want to give me one for basically nothing, you know, I'll take it.
Well,
I tend to stay away from
I'm quoting today, the HOA is $74.
It could be $74 today. It might be $274 in 2 years.
It could very well be, but it's a standalone.
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically a single family, it's like a condo is a single family, but in any event, it makes a lot of sense. In fact, I just received notification that everything is closed, and
congratulations.
So at some point today, I'm going to take a drive out and pick up the keys and start to work on Monday as far as painting, floor covering, and
I like it.
Getting it ready. My first payment is due October the 1st.
Yeah.
I'll have it rented by then.
Oh, for sure.
Invested cash flow.
Yeah. Yeah. So in general, condos, I don't think the new investors, I don't think new investors in general appreciate that homeowners association fees could go up.
They do.
Yeah. Again, if the numbers work, the numbers work. I mean, yeah.
And it could also be the complex that does not want to have rentals in their complex.
Absolutely. Yes, correct.
And that can bite you.
Yeah. And it's some condo markets blew up in 2010. You couldn't get a loan anymore, right? There was, the ratios were all off. So be careful. But if the numbers work, the numbers work.
I agree.
Thank you. Hey, another question real quick. As investors, should we establish like an LLC or corporation?
That's a very good conversation from the standpoint. I was going to bring this up. Two areas of, we as investors, two areas that we need to take into strong consideration. Obviously, it's a tax strategy. And number two, which is equally important, vesting.
I think long-term, if you're going to do it at scale, yes. I think if it's going to stop you from taking action and doing something right now, I talk to a lot of people that want to do deals. And then I've talked to a bunch of people that have done a bunch of deals. I never talked to a person that's done one and then stopped. You know what I mean? And so I think if you've never done it, I'd say the first thing is you have to get to proof of concept quickly, and don't let like forming an LLC stop you. But yes, I do think you should have the right entity structure at some point.
Yeah, entity structure is an important variable. It's just not the first thing. I think there are too many companies out there selling, $8,000 this and $9,000 this, and let me set up a layered LLCs and this and that in North Dakota and this in Massachusetts, and you haven't even looked at a deal yet. I think there's a lot of people that can create confusion, and setting up an LLC is moving you towards getting a deal. Entity structure is vital. It's an important part of both liability protection, accounting, financial future, all of that stuff. But it stops too many people from doing anything. So, yeah, I guess that's my thoughts.
Any other questions out there? Well, Michael and Jason, it was lovely to see you today, and you know, this great information that you shared, and I think it's you know, very positive for a lot of people that are thinking about investing, but at the same time, you know, this group is meant to share information, and it's helpful for if you're working with investors too, to know their frame of mind and how they're thinking. So, and also to have the resources, you know, I can call Jason if I have a question, I can call Michael or Tom if I have any questions, and we are here to help each other. So that's something I get from this, and it's real positive. But I'm going to have to have you guys be on probably Don Scordino is not here today, but I'm sure he'd probably want to see you guys on his radio show, which he started, and he's an investor as well. So, you know, we're amongst a group of great.
Yeah, Jason and I are we'll go anywhere, help anybody who asks. So thank you for having us, Carmen. Tom, take care of yourself. Sounds like you got a year ahead of you. So get through it. Be well. And Jason, man, always love hearing you talk, man. It's been fun.
Thank you guys for everything. I'm an open book when it comes to this stuff. So if I can help with anything, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to help. I don't believe that there's any secrets. You know, it's just working and being consistent. So if I can help you, let me know.
Appreciate it.
Hey, Carmen. Do you have like a contact list of all the, I guess, the personnel here? Maybe if you don't mind sending out to us. I wouldn't mind pinging ideas off of any one of you here regarding investing.
You got it.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Will do. Okay, guys, have a great weekend and see you next Friday, okay?
Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.
Thanks.
Thank you.